For your viewing pleasure, this broadcast of the Municipal Council meeting of Alpena is made possible by the funding provided by the City of Alpena. Thank you for your generosity.
Good evening and welcome to the Alpena City Council meeting of March 4th, 2019. Call the order, please.
Hess. Here. Johnson.
Here.
Nielsen.
Here.
Nowak.
Here.
And Walgora.
Here. Please rise for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, modifications to the agenda. The city manager has asked and the attorney has asked that we delete closed session from tonight's.
I move we delete closed session.
Second.
Hess.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Nielsen.
Yes.
Nowak.
Yes.
And Walgora.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Any other modifications? Approval of the minutes, open and closed session of February 18th, 2019, and special session of February 20th, 2019. Any issues or changes? Citizens appearing before council on agenda and non-agenda items are allowed 5 minutes each to address your concerns. This is the only time during tonight's council meeting that you're allowed to address council. If you'd like to do so, please come to the podium and state your name and address for our records.
Good evening, my name is Lloyd McClung. I live at 580 Long Rapids Road. I'm here tonight as a citizen just to support the ordinances. They're item 13A and B, the ordinances that would restrict the sale and use of marijuana in the city. I just think that it's a bad thing for the city, and my main reason for being here is just to satisfy myself that the voting members here are aware of the dangers of marijuana that's been allowed as a result of the midterm election referendum and all that. And this came to my attention as a result of a publication from Hillsdale College that discussed in some detail the dangers of marijuana. And I've made this article available to the council members, and hopefully you already knew that. I hope that you did, but if you didn't, I hope you will look at it and read it and take it to heart and consider what these dangers really are that aren't being well discussed in the public venue as far as I can tell. Anyway, it's good to see that the Alpena Township did limit restrictions on marijuana. It'd be good for the city to do likewise, and I encourage you to do that. But just briefly, for the audience that may not be aware, marijuana has, through the usage of marijuana, mental illness, schizophrenia, and violence, family violence that affects children, especially young adults have kids using marijuana, things get out of control. And you'd think that Michigan would have learned from the state of Colorado, who implemented this same procedure back in 2013. In the state of Colorado, the aggravated assaults, the murders, the child abuse and neglect, and traffic accidents have gone through the roof. You can imagine the implications for the law enforcement having to deal with this additional problem. So that's it. I hope that you voting members will be aware of these things and will vote to enact these ordinances, and that's about it. Any questions?
Thank you, Lloyd. We did receive your material that you sent the city and appreciate your input. Is there anyone else?
Mark Hunter, 614 8th Street. On the marijuana, actually the increase in aggressive behavior is not in any sense established, but where I'm more concerned is young people using marijuana as their minds are developing. There's good or better research showing that connecting to lower IQs, which then translates in a long-term deficit for our country in many ways, including economic. Also, schizophrenia has a high correlation. I think it just has to do with people using it while their minds are still developing, because the brain keeps developing until you're about 24, 25. Other comments, the minutes for the CIP meeting are scant. Very scant. It's hard, if you didn't attend the meeting, which I did not, there's very little idea of what transpired there. I know that in the CIP, projects are ranked as to importance and categories, but still a department member might have emphasized a certain thing for certain reasons. That would have been nice to know. Also, there is nothing as to what questions were asked or what the answers were. And a lot of hearing minutes that I've seen, they do list that. The other comment is on the SUEZ contract adjustment of about $17,000 a year. It looks like, in the packet anyway, that would be a permanent increase every year. I don't know if a permanent increase every year would necessarily be justified. I'd rather see this maybe looked at once a year and approved once a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Is there anyone else? And Mark, we'll take your questions as far as the CIP minutes. I'll take that up and see what we can do about that. If you certainly have any questions, obviously contact a department head for the time being, or Greg or myself, as far as what questions might have been asked. Anyone else this evening? Okay. I would ask that City Council and our guests take a moment of silence to acknowledge the passing of Councilman Nowak's father this past weekend, if you will, please. Thank you. The consent agenda this evening is A, bills to be allowed in the amount of $335,385.90, and B is the 2019 election workers' wages.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Nowak?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye?
And Hess.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, I have a proclamation this evening. It is NEMROC Day for March 7, 2019. Whereas on January 26, 1968, Northeast Michigan Rehabilitation and Opportunity Center, or NEMROC Incorporated, received its Articles of Incorporation from the Michigan Department of Treasury. And whereas since inception it is known that NEMROC's mission provides vocational, personal, and social development opportunities for individuals with disabilities to fully integrate into their community. And whereas with the support from the Alpena community, NEMROC was able to establish programs to educate, train, and develop persons with disabilities and other barriers to employment to become quality employees for local employers. And whereas it is recognized, NEMROC initially served 3 individuals with a director in 1968 and has since grown to serve and employ as many as 150 local citizens. And whereas it is known that NEMROC has developed a self-sustained business enterprise which provides gainful employment for persons with disabilities and other barriers to employment for over 50 years. And whereas NEMROC locally supports area businesses with requirements of raw materials, supplies, and services surpassing $7 million, which supports a payroll of nearly $3 million on an annual basis. And whereas NEMROC will continue to grow and create additional vocational opportunities for more people with disabilities in order to prepare them for constantly changing technologies and community job placement requirements. And whereas, be it known that on March 7, 2019, NEMROC will be hosting an open house celebrating 50 years of vocational training for people with disabilities in the Alpena community. And whereas the city of Alpena recognizes NEMROC as a community employer, which has vested interest in the Alpena area providing employment for persons with disabilities, and these same individuals have further demonstrated their value as contributing citizens of Alpena. Now, therefore, I, Matthew J. Walagora, by the virtue of authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Alpena, do hereby proclaim March 7, 2019 as NEMROC Day in the city of Alpena, and urge all area citizens to recognize and support the efforts of NEMROC and the quality products and services created and produced by their employees. And David Siglowski is here from NEMROC. Congratulations, my friend. And your position at NEMROC is Director.
And you're all welcome Thursday from 11 till 3.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, we're down to report of officers, and first up is City Manager's State of the City Address.
Okay, before I start, I'll give you two bits of good news. One, this address is 25% shorter than last year's, number one. And number two, after I did not watch, but was in my office at home, and when I knew the State of the Union started around 9, and when I went out at 10:30 and it was still going, I will guarantee you I will not be that long. So it will be shorter than that. As I sat down to prepare my fourth State of the City address, I began to replay in my mind how our city and the community as a whole has grown and diversified since I became interim city manager in May of 2012 and permanent manager in May of 2013. Although the industrial sector remains pivotal to our economic success, it has been overshadowed by much more dramatic growth of the retail, restaurant, service, health, and financial sectors. For many years, we have witnessed this growth just beyond our borders in Alpena Township or even other communities such as Gaylord. However, the past several years has seen a surge of activity within the city itself, especially the past year. Internally, the city continues to take actions that both personnel-wise and structurally should provide the foundation to ensure not only its sustainability, but enable it to adapt to an ever-changing economic, political, and regulatory climate. I am confident that the heading we have charted for our city will make it stronger and a better place for each of us to live, work, and play. Financially, this was borne out by our most recent audit that found the city on a solid financial footing, with steps being taken to stabilize both our retirement and retiree health insurance liabilities. Although our fund balance dropped by nearly $233,000, all of that and then some can be attributed to a one-time unexpected expense of $270,000 to repair the collapsed river boardwalk in North Riverfront Park. Despite this, the fund balance remains at a healthy 25%, providing a 3-month cushion in the event of a major calamity. Credit for balancing the needs of the city against the ever-tightening revenue stream falls squarely on the Clerk Treasurer Finance Office led by Anna Soik, each of the department heads, and each and every city employee. In the balance of my address, I'll highlight the successes of the past year as well as our shortfalls and look at opportunities and challenges that lie ahead in the coming year and beyond. Within our community, in terms of economic growth and future endeavors, I'd like to start out by that in 2018, we saw modest growth in property assessed values. This has been a very slow recovery since the Great Recession of 2007, 8, 9, that period, really on through about 2012. Residential and commercial grew at over 2.5%, but industrial values remain constant. In this year, we see a very definite volatility and a rather dramatic change from those figures. Residential values jumped as much as 8.5%. Commercial flattened off, showing no increase. However, industrial, which has been stagnant for 2 years, increased by 3%. Now, those growths are good, but those are not necessarily will we see them in revenue because of limitations by the Headley and Proposal A and the Headley. Our growth, we can have drops in revenue and in property values that could be, as we saw, of 10, 15%. However, we can only increase by the Proposal A rate of inflation or 5%, whichever is less. And I think this year we were at 2.4%, which is one of the bigger ones we've ever had since Proposal A went into effect. For many years, we were lucky if it was 1%. And so you can see that return is very slow to get back to where we were before those drop in property values. On the citywide economic and community development front, as stated in the January 16th Alpena news article, 2018 was a banner year for new construction in both the city and the township, Alpena Township. Although the number of city permits dropped 5.6%, the construction value of those permits more than tripled from $5.3 to $18.2 million. Much of this is attributed to several new projects that have been in the planning process for over a year and then finally broke ground. Some will have immediate impact in the next year or two, others will take longer. I'll briefly go through those. I'm not going to go into the details that are in the report. You can look at those at your leisure as far as the details, but going through quickly, two major projects that started last year was the groundbreaking for construction of the Northland Area Federal Credit Union building on Bagley. This is an $11 million project creating 30 new jobs, and I will say once it's done, it will be the architectural centerpiece of the Bagley M32 corridor by far. The other is the fall 2018 groundbreaking for the $6 million Besser Senior Assisted Living Facility at Johnson and Wilson Street. Again, this project, hopefully right now anticipated to be completed near the end of this year, would create 47 residential units along with amenities, and this being only the first phase, creating 47 jobs, and they're already looking at a second phase as well as another related development. So that could be a very important project, well, is important and could become even more important in the future. Other notable projects, the Big B Coffee development here in the downtown made a major change in that corner between First and State along Chisholm. Also, the reopening of the Thunder Bay Manufacturing Allegheny Technologies building on 11th Avenue by local businessman Jeff Konchak. This will be a work in progress, but it could have, over time, a significant impact economically on the community if it develops the way he envisions. We also had in 2018 the groundbreaking for the $2.2 million expansion of the WG Benji plant on Kavanaugh, creating 12 new jobs, and we had 2 new restaurants opening, the Second Mangoes downtown, where the Owl restaurant used to be, and then the former owner of Owl, moving into where Bergie's was, farther down on Chisholm, in the Owl's Nest. So a lot of activity. There are some additional projects that are in the planning stage, but one for sure will begin yet this year, and others will be a little farther down the road. The dry dock on River Street, the bar and the former Concert Connection will be rehabbed and rehabilitated with the help of assistance from the MEDC into a new restaurant bar, as well as having 5 new rental residentials on the second floor. That is expected. The paperwork and the grant approval process is ongoing, and they're still looking at construction could begin by mid-year on that. So that will be a major project in our downtown. Also, over the years, there's been an on-again, off-again interest in the redevelopment of the 200 block of North 2nd Avenue, which is occupied by the John Henry Antique Mall. With the unfortunate passing of its owner and the building now for sale, this could be an opportunity that could lead to a major significant rehab project not seen in the downtown since the center building project 10, 15, or probably closer to 20 years ago now. So that one is one we will be watching very closely and working with Target as well on to make sure that that doesn't slip between the cracks, and that we keep that in our focus. On the public community development side, this past year was also very productive. As everybody knows, after several years of fundraising and the city acquiring grants, the splash pad at Starlight Beach was opened on June 30th to rave reviews and huge use, and we expect that to continue. And with that development, the master plan for Starlight Beach is nearly complete. It's probably 95% complete now. We also had the dedication of new public sculptures, one located in Gleason Park along the river, and a series of 5 near Van Leer Hall on the ACC campus along the city bypath. The city did contribute money towards the Gleason Park sculpture, and will look at further contributions when considered appropriate, and also when budget allows. I will say, as a longtime proponent of public art and its value to the community, I have been excited about this project, and certainly am glad to see that will be ongoing for at least the next several years, and should bring a number of additional projects to fruition. The city has completed numerous water, sewer, and street projects throughout the city. The most notable, which I'm sure everybody noticed, because you had quite a detour if you used that street regularly, and that was Miller Street on the north side that was finished this past fall. We also had other major projects near Ella White School, on Hobbs Drive, and on several other streets that resulted in a total of some $2.1 million being spent in local expenditures from the city's water, sewer, and street funds. And additionally, out of those funds, the city is currently has under contract, started last fall, to extend utilities and the road into the north, the city's US 23 North property, which we've purchased in the early 2000s. We've had for nearly 20 years, have not seen development on it. And part of the problem has been wetlands and then accessing the rear portion. And this project, which will be finished by June, will allow us to do that. The final one I'd like to mention is the 95% completion of the city dog park. That was delayed a year because of the problems with the boardwalk at North Riverfront Park. And we were able to finally begin work last summer, and all the fencing is up. We had a soft opening of the dog park in the fall, and we have some additional signage to do and a few other bits of work, and then we'll do a formal dedication later this spring or in the early summer. Several of these, in total, these projects equate to approximately $25 million in public and private expenditures during 2018 and moving forward through 19. So that's a considerable investment on both the public and private end, and that has a major impact on our city. We still have a couple of challenges ahead of us in terms of both economic and community development. The one on the economic development end is the site over here at the corner of Water, and second, that everybody is waiting, hopefully, for a developer to redevelop the former Alpena Power Company site. I know Jim Claridge and Adam Paul, our Planning Development Director, have been working diligently on this. We probably have one of the most serious group that is looking at that, and we're hoping that it can lead to an actual project that can be presented to the city and move forward here over the next several months. But the devil's always in the details, and we'll just have to sit and wait to see if all the numbers work and the project can move forward. The other is Mishikiwa's Park revitalization. This park had a master plan done for it at the same time as Starlight Beach back in 2004, approved by council and the Planning Commission and the Recreation Advisory Board. The problem, there wasn't really a problem, but what we did is we focused on Starlight Beach for the next 10 to 12 years. And as I said earlier, that park is pretty much now fully developed. There's just a few minor things left. But that was done at the expense of Mishikiwa's Park, where there was little or nothing done, other than by an outside organization, the volleyball group that built the volleyball courts at that park. When the city council decided last January, a year ago January, not to consider an RV park as part of that redevelopment, it was then looked at to determine the focus was going to be on the Mishikiwas. The question was, how were we going to proceed? We had a plan that was now 14, 15 years old, and the recommendation by staff, which the council concurred with, was that we would look to update the plan, utilizing the same process we used back in '04 of a public charrette and getting as much public input as we can. And that process will begin actually 8 days from now, on March 12th, at NOAA. The first of at least 3 meetings where we'll be working with the public, with our planning commission, our engineering and planning staffs, facilitated by NEMROC, to update that plan and get it incorporated into our recreation plan so that we can apply for funding next year, or yes, in 2020, for whichever we determine are the first priorities of that plan in terms of for implementation. Several of the projects that were mentioned previously, as well as others, would not have occurred if not for the dedication and involvement of various civic organizations, businesses, and individuals. This is a recurring theme throughout the city and is one that we can be justly proud of. It is a true measure of a community's inner strength and commitment, and we have more than our share. I list several examples. Many of them I've listed in every one of my State of the City. And I do that intentionally because it shows that these are not one-time endeavors. If somebody comes in, does it, and then they leave and walk away. But people are doing these projects, many of them the same one, helping maintain a park, adopting a park or a street, and other things, year in and year out. And that says a great deal about our community. I did just want to highlight a couple of them. The completion of the redesigned downtown Pocket Park landscaping led by Doug Pratt, in conjunction with the reinstallation of the restored mural, which following its near total destruction in a violent windstorm in late 2017, the park will once again be a centerpiece of the 100 block of West Chisholm. We also have a group of citizens, parents, who have very much wanted to bring back the outdoor skating, free outdoor skating that we have had in the past when we used to have the large outdoor rink at Mishikiwas. They made an attempt a year ago at Thompson Park, and it really didn't come off very well. They reorganized, came back, and developed what is a small rink, but one that they wanted to try to demonstrate that could be successful in Bayview Park, right near Prentice, and they have done that. And we have had talks with them that if they can keep their organization going and can show success with this, that it is something where the city may be able to work with them in the future on making something that could be more permanent as far as an outdoor rink. So we'll be looking at that. Also, everything that I've talked about up to now has all been what's happening in the city. And this is important because that's what we're about. We are the city. However, the city also gets involved and cooperates with other governmental entities and other agencies outside our city, looking at things that are more regional in concept that have an impact on us and our area. A couple of these that I want to mention. One is, I'm not going to go into detail on this because our fire chief did a very good job of that last meeting when they extended the agreement between Presque Isle County, or Township, Presque Isle Township and the city, which allowed the city's fire EMS department to provide first responder fire protection and EMS services to their township, but more importantly, to help them to reestablish their own fire EMS for I think it's the West District of the township that had gone defunct or into a default probably, 6-8 years ago. They really, in the 3 years of the plan, of the agreement, they really met all their objectives. The only thing that both the township and the city fire department, led by the fire chief, felt would be beneficial as an additional year to do further training of the new volunteers, and especially to increase their leadership skills. And so the council, I will say wisely, and with much appreciation, extended the agreement for 1 year. This has been a challenging and intense effort by both the city AFD and Presque Isle Township. However, in the end, the creation of a new, fully functional governmental fire EMS department is something that both can be proud of. Ultimately, this was the right endeavor to undertake, and the results speak for themselves. The other one is the current city-county ambulance agreement, which expired actually at the end of last year, with no interruption in service as a new agreement was negotiated. The city has provided county-wide advanced life support ambulance service since 1992. Due to the dramatic downturn in property values, there's that wicked recession that we had, the Great Recession. Property value, during the Great Recession, the funding generated by the 1 mil county levy dropped significantly. Consequently, the last 5-year agreement the city had 0% funding increases, even though our costs went up and would every year for its duration, and only 1 ambulance was purchased during that time rather than the usual 2. Funding became so acute that in mid-December, the county was forced to terminate first responder payments to all the townships and the city. For the last half of the current fiscal year, this will cost the city ambulance fund approximately $24,000. In January, Chief Forbush, Deputy Chief Adrian, and I met with the County Ambulance Committee to work on a new contract. The current ambulance millage will be up for renewal in 2020. This led all parties to agree to a shorter 2-year contract with a new one to be negotiated following the millage vote. We agreed to 2% annual increases and 1 new ambulance at the price of no first responder fees for the term of the agreement. This agreement will come before council at its next meeting, and they will be asked to approve that. We also impressed upon the committee the need to rethink the operational paradigm of county ambulance service. Traditionally, first responders from the appropriate township would arrive at the scene to provide initial aid until the city ambulance and crew arrived. They would provide additional aid and transport the individual to the hospital, whereupon the county service ended. Today, that is no longer the case. 90+% of the seriously ill or injured patients are transferred to another hospital in the state. In most cases, this service is provided by the city EMS department. Consequently, we recommended that the county first responder and emergency ambulance services, as well as the long-distance transfers, no longer be viewed as separate services, one performed by the county millage and the other by the city. Instead, they need to be viewed as an integrated operation providing a continuum of care service from first response to final treatment destination. The model and its costs would then determine the millage request in 2020. All are in agreement that the current 1 mill levy, currently less than that due to a Headley rollback, is insufficient to meet today's ambulance service needs for the citizens of Alpena County. City staff will be working with the county committee to accurately assess the financial requirements to provide service in the future and prepare a new millage request in 2020 that reflects the needs of a 21st century ambulance service. The third and final kind of joint effort with other jurisdictions is the Camp Grayling Combat Readiness Training Center Joint Land Use Study, which was overseen by NEMROC. It was initiated through the Department of Defense, basically looking at how those two bases affect their surrounding communities and the relationship between them. This has been completed and adopted by the multi-jurisdictional committees that oversaw the plan. And now the next step is implementation. The CRTC command and the local representatives, including the mayor, met to discuss the creation of a base community council. Whether this will serve as the joint land use study implementation committees that they foresaw or an adjunct to it is not yet clear. The relationship between the CRTC and the surrounding communities has historically been good, but there is always room for improvement, and communication is a two-way street. So as these groups evolve, I trust that the goal will be the implementation to the extent possible of the recommendations of the study and an even closer working relationship between the base and the nearby Alpena communities. Now I want to go into city management and operations. First, staffing, which we saw considerable change in 2018. The first being, of course, the retirement of both our city clerk, treasurer, finance director, and her deputy, all within about 5 days of each other. And the
2 days.
2 days, okay, even worse. And the appointment of Anna as Karen's replacement and the promotion of Leland Bruning into the deputy position. We also saw every one of the individuals within that department but one change jobs. All that happening at the same time. I myself have never shied away from saying I was concerned about that and how it was all going to work out, but I have to say I've been very pleasantly, not surprised, but just happy about the results so far, that it has gone much smoother than anticipated. I anticipated anyways. And there's been very little, in terms of missing a beat, in terms of the services provided to the public. Internally, it's been a struggle at times, as I expected it to be, but a lot of new ideas are coming out of it, and I think it's going to be, in the end, certainly for the betterment of the community. The retirement of Jeff Shea and his replacement didn't go quite so well. Because of the shortage of level 3 assessors statewide, we could not find a single candidate anywhere to replace Jeff. So we ended up having to go out and hire, through an RFP process, a contracted assessor who we did with Berg Assessing and Consulting of Rogers City. That meant we did not have an assessor in the office 5 days a week as we had before. Yet surprisingly, after a few bumps in the road, that too has worked generally very well. People are still able to get a hold of the assessor through a direct line and through email, and in many cases, most of their requests can still be handled downstairs at the desk by staff. Within the fire department, we saw the retirement of Captain Brian Caldwell after 26 years of service with the department. Along with that was the creation of the new Community Risk Reduction Officer. All of a sudden, that created a domino of position changes. We suddenly had vacancies, one vacancy at the lieutenant or the captain level and 2 at the lieutenant level that had to be filled. These were filled, but then it left 1 vacancy in the rank and file, which we have not yet filled, but between HR and the fire department, they're working diligently to get that position filled as well. And lastly, within the city police department, Joel is usually each year asks for another officer. And I always say if the budget will allow, and always in the end, there's a line drawn through that. Then a proposal came in discussions that Joel had with ACC of providing 20 hours a week during the school year of an officer on campus. And what was agreed upon was to do that, but that would require the hiring of an additional officer, and that would then be split 50-50 between ACC and the city. That has worked out well. We're in the still doing our due diligence, going through some final steps of evaluating candidates, and hopefully shortly that person will be on board. What that person will do is free up and allow 3 other officers that have been designated who will take part of their time, depending upon shift, of being on campus for at least 20 hours a week while school is in session. As well as we will always have an officer at their board meetings, which they requested. So it has really worked out very well for both parties. Also on the personnel front, actually in about, I think, 8 days, or a few days from now, we'll be starting negotiations with the one bargaining unit whose contract expires this year, and that's the fire EMS unit. Expires June 30th, so we'll be getting negotiations with them. The other 4 units, DPW, Clerical, Police Patrol, Police Command, all expire next June 30th in 2020. So those negotiations will begin probably early next year. So far, in my time as city manager, the city unions and management have been able to negotiate what at least I think both sides would say are fair and responsible agreements through the past 2 to 3 negotiating cycles, resulting in contracts that meet the needs of the union members while reflecting the fiscal parameters set by the city, and I don't see that changing in the future. We also, as a city, are constantly dealing with our benefits, insurances, and retirement. I'm not going to go into the details on those, but those are reviewed constantly. Some on a yearly basis. Our insurance, our retirement is looked at much more often, and now with a new financial advisor, we're going to have quarterly meetings with that firm, and that should, our hope is that in the long term, we're going to see an improvement in our return on investments, which are the key to the solvency of our retirement system, which is, it is solvent. It's over 80% funded, and by the state of Michigan, we are more than adequate. Though that does not mean we're going to be happy with 80%. Our goal is to continue to work back up towards 100%, and that will do. The last part of my report is what to me is the most important, the one I really want to spend time on, and that is the challenges and priorities moving ahead. We have, we've done well, I believe, over the last year and over the last several years, but there are still challenges and opportunities that lie ahead of us. One of the first one is one I've mentioned here a couple times already, and it will continue to be here, I'm afraid, for a number of years to come, and that's our tax base. Again, it's only climbing back slowly. Assessed values are going up at a pretty reasonable rate, but taxable values are not. And that's the lifeblood of our city in terms of revenue. So that is always going to be an issue for a number of years to come. I will say, though, that our city, through especially Anna's office, but every department head, and in many ways, every employee of the city, have become very adept at getting the most out of the least. And have done a very good job at that. And we will continue to do that in the future. That I have absolutely no doubt. Legacy costs, which I mentioned before, are the other one that will be an ongoing issue. And one of the main reasons is because it has gone from a local issue to a state issue, where the state has both oversight and regulation. And this is on our pension and on retiree health. Since the signing of PA 202 or 217, the states established standards and universal criteria to determine the health and sustainability of a municipality's pension and retiree health care. Anna asked to submit a report the very 1st of January of each year about the previous fiscal year. We then got a letter back from the Treasury Department last week. Our pension is fine, which we knew. But our retiree health, not so much. We're not much different than most in the state. We are only 20% funded, roughly. State wants at least 40. And they sent us a notice of preliminary finding of us being underfunded. So we have a choice. We can do nothing, in which case they will declare us underfunded, and we will have to put an action plan together that satisfies the state of how we're going to get out of it. The other is to file a waiver, which is what we will do, stating what we have done in the past, changes we've made regarding retiree health, and hopefully that will satisfy them. And then we just simply have to continue doing those things. That waiver application must be approved by council, and it must be filed within 45 days of the receipt of the letter. So our intent, between Anna and I, and I'll probably write it, let her rip it apart, and we'll revise it. The intent is to get it done and get it back to council at the next meeting, so that we can get it into the state, and we'll see what they say. But this will be an ongoing issue for us, I'm afraid to say. Water sewer litigation with Alpena Township. I don't think this is new news either, but finally, following a final ruling by Judge Mack last September, after 4+ years of litigation, the township appealed portions of his ruling, with the city cross-appealing its own issues. In January, the city and township met in mediation mandated by the Michigan Court of Appeals. Unfortunately, this did not lead to a resolution. Both parties must now submit their briefs to the court by March 27th, and this has been verified by Bill that it was initially, I think, February 27th, and it has been extended 1 month. Additional responses to the briefs and responses to the responses will require at least another 50 days, likely putting off all arguments before the court until late summer at the earliest, or even the last quarter of this year. Whatever the result, this never-ending saga will be far from over. Ultimately, when the dust settles on the legal issues, it will still come down to action at the local level. In the best interests of their customers and constituents, the city and township must sit down face-to-face and reach a mutually agreed-upon long-term water and sewer contract. Despite all the technical and legal arguments, it boils down to one simple fact. Both sides must have a rate structure and agreement that ensures the long-term sustainability of the city's water and sewer facilities that are compliant with the requirements of the MDEQ and the US EPA. Without that, we are all in trouble. Both sides have become so obsessed with proving they are right, we no longer see the reality of the situation we are in. We have two systems, for good or bad, that are inextricably linked and must coexist for the welfare of our two communities. It should not be that if it works for our side, city or township, that's all that matters. We eventually, as I said earlier, must sit down face to face and without posturing, address the necessary issues and reach a mutually agreeable solution. Ultimately, this means we all must compromise in meaningful ways. And I will add, this the city has done. We expect no less from the township. A truly effective agreement means neither of us gets fully what we want. That is the nature of negotiation. Medical recreational marijuana facilities. So jumping from one thing to another here. With the passage of the recreational marijuana initiative last November and the issuance by the state at about the same time of permanent rules and regulations for the licensing of medical marijuana facilities, the fate of marijuana facilities within the city of Alpena fell squarely in the lap of City Council. During discussion on January 21st, Council unanimously directed the city attorney to prepare an ordinance opting the city out of placement of recreational marijuana facilities in the city. This is due to the many uncertainties in the law as written, which could lead to major problems that are best avoided. Once the state adopts permanent rules and the dust settles on the numerous legal issues, Council can review its position at any time. At the same time, it authorized the preparation of an ordinance prohibiting the use of marijuana in public places as specifically defined. The opt-out ordinance had first reading on February 18th and will have second reading and action by council later this evening. The prohibition against use in public places has undergone revisions and will be reviewed by council tonight as well. If agreed upon, it will likely have its first reading tonight also. As to medical marijuana facilities, staff was directed to work with the City Planning Commission on possible locations for the various types of facilities with a recommendation on how many, if any, that should be allowed and where. This will be, in my opinion, a thought-provoking and broad-based process involving council, planning commission, staff, and the public. The public consisting of users, non-users, institutions, and the medical marijuana facility operators. Ultimately, council will need to sift through all the information and comments, weigh the pros and cons, and make a decision. The marijuana industry is unique compared to most commercial industrial sectors relative to its regulation at the state and local level. The state, through the ballot initiatives, state legislation, and state agency rulemaking authority, controls nearly all facets of the marijuana industry. The local municipalities are given varying degrees of zoning authority and say in the initial approval and compliance with the building codes necessary to receive a certificate of occupancy. Follow-up inspections and compliance tends to fall with the state. Violation of codes, regulations, the acts themselves. We can only surmise just how these facilities, if allowed, will impact our city. Will the potential benefits outweigh the potential negatives or vice versa? Some communities have reported excellent experiences, some not so. We really won't know until we take that big step and allow a facility or facilities in the city. If it works out well, then we reap the benefits, whatever they may be. If not, that's the rub. Once allowed, it is difficult, if not impossible, to turn back the clock. As I said earlier, the decision is ultimately up to council. Staff's job is to implement their directives in the most effective manner. As city manager with many years of planning experience, my recommendation is that if council decides to allow medical marijuana operations in the city, that it does so in deliberate and measured steps. This will allow for ongoing, thorough evaluation of the process and the impacts, with expansion always an option when justified by the results. Next item is the city marina. The past year, Harbor Master Don Gilmet was able to negotiate a new 3-year contract. It's not a panacea. It divests the city of many of the day-to-day operations and those associated costs, but major infrastructure or capital costs still fall on the city. We also know that eventually the time's going to run out on having a third-party operator, and it's likely then that the operation's going to fall directly on the city. So I have requested that with the next couple of 2+ years that we have before this current contract expires, that Don, along with Rich, who oversees DPW, which does a fair amount of work at the marina itself, that they look at and prepare options for the city in terms of that, when that day comes, then when we don't have that third-party operator. We need to be creative in our thinking and bring everything and everyone to the table, initially starting with our local harbor advisory committee, but ultimately including marina users, the general public, and the State Waterways Commission. To successfully make our marina sustainable over the long haul, it's going to take participation from all these different players. Last address, I talked about the Hillman State Non-Motorized Trail as the latest one that was being developed by the state. But unfortunately, because of cost overruns regarding bridges along the path, along the trail, they have indefinitely postponed the implementation. We're not sure if it's ever going to happen for sure. The eastern end of the trail from Bagley up to Franklin, which runs through the city, was the intent was that that was going to become part of our bypass and would actually be paved and lighted. The MDOT, and this is about 0.6 of a mile, MDOT was going to put the gravel base over the current rail bed, and then we would pave it, put in the conduit and perhaps the electrical lines for the lighting, which would then be added later. I've asked Rich to reach out to NDOT to see if they would still be willing to gravel that section, and then we could look, because we had initially planned on budgeting it for this next budget year to do that work, and that way we could go ahead and do it and get that in and make it part of our bypass. So we'll see whether that transpires, what the state wants to do, because we had never budgeted to put the gravel base in on top of that railroad bed. And so if the state decides not to do that, MDOT, then we would not proceed at this time either with the paving. Last year I did propose that, speaking of bypass and that the city investigate the development of strategically placed bicycle parking areas in the downtown to reduce congestion on our downtown sidewalks. To encourage this, we allocated funds in this year's budget, along with intent to put more money in next year and get some additional funding from the DDA. Through the city engineering department, we've developed 3 locations with plans to build 2 of these in the first phase. Staff is working with the DDA and its parking committee on the project, and if approved by the DDA and council, as it will be presented to both those bodies, we could see work begin either in late spring or summer on some of those. I'm very hopeful that that does proceed. Our comprehensive plan update, the work on the mandated 5-year update of the city's comprehensive plan by NEMROC, city staff, and the planning commission continues with its completion. Presentation to planning commission and council for adoption is looked at by mid-year. Prior to that, there will be a public hearing to gather any additional final public comment, and then the plan will go through that approval process. The plan itself will provide a vision for our city's future, encompassing a variety of issues that will determine the character of our city and define who we are for at least the next 5 years. And last but not least, the city and Target Alpena. Jim and I have a very good working relationship, but I do like to kid him a lot, especially about that empty lot a block away from here. The association between the city and Target Alpena has been ongoing for well over 20 years. It can be compared to a marriage, which undergoes high points and low points, sometimes being stressed to the point of breaking, as it did a number of years ago when the two embarked on a temporary separation. However, today I can say that relationship is as strong and as vitally important to both institutions as it ever was. Target, in conjunction with the city's Planning and Development Department, have worked in tandem to support existing businesses and assist new development in the city. Through the contacts and efforts of Target's Jim Claridge, Alpena is no longer just a name on the Weather Channel map. No longer on the outside looking in regard to development interest and activity. Instead, we are on the economic development map, and that interest comes looking for us. Within the city, key development sites are still being pitched, most notably the former APC site and the US 23 North property. Although vacant for longer than we would like, the effort is there and positive results will follow in due course. Along with these, I have requested that the long vacant former Ripley Street Station and Western Auto buildings on Ripley Boulevard be included in Target's portfolio of economic development projects for the city, as well as the redevelopment of the previously mentioned Antique Mall block in downtown. Together, the city and Target have expanded our city's economic opportunities far beyond what we could accomplish alone and for far less cost. Having the right people in the right place at the right time can make all the difference, and indeed, it is making a difference for the city of Alpena. And now, what you've all been waiting for, my closing remarks. Each year, the list of accomplishments and challenges continue to grow. As soon as one project is completed or issue addressed, new ones appear. To some, this may be disconcerting, as we always seem to be climbing uphill while never reaching the summit. But that is the very description of a community on the move, never standing still, always striving to climb that hill in front of it. We should only be concerned if we feel we have finally reached the summit. For then, there is only one way to go, and that is down. Alpena has so many more summits to climb, and we are blessed that when we do reach the top of one, there is always another to challenge us. This is what keeps us alive and vibrant, and what will spur us on to ever greater endeavors. There will always be obstacles and detours in our road to better ourselves, but I have yet to see one that we have not been able to eventually overcome. As long as we strive and never rest on our laurels, the future will be bright for our sanctuary of the Great Lakes. The end. Now that you've listened to 18 pages of the state of the city, I would ask that you listen to 1.5 pages of a follow-up. This is addressed to Mayor Matthew J. Walagora, Alpena City Council, City Board and Commission members, City Department heads and administrative personnel, and city employees. When I accepted the offer and then began employment with the city on June 5th, 1998 as the City Planner Administrative Aide, I saw this as my penultimate job from which I would retire some 18 years later at age 62, which I had now passed. I had it all planned out. As a side note, since no one ever could tell me what the administrative aid portion of my job entailed, I later had that title changed to Planning and Development Director. As they say about the best laid plans, circumstances and fate altered them completely. And suddenly, after 14 years, I found myself thrust into the role of city manager, for which I considered myself both unqualified and ill-prepared to take on. Despite my misgivings and the difficult circumstances that surrounded my appointment and the first year of my tenure, with the invaluable support and assistance from my administrative staff and the rank and file city employees, we not only kept the city on an even keel, but were able to move it forward. Now, after what will be 7.5 years as city manager and 21.5 years with the city, it has come time for me to close this chapter in my life and announce my pending retirement from the city of Alpena. My last workday will be Friday, December 20th, 2019, with my actual retirement dates being sometime in mid-January of next year. I wanted to make the announcement now to provide council with more than enough time to discuss and implement an appropriate plan for choosing my successor. When I came here in a previous century, and I can say that because it actually was, for the planner job, I knew nothing about Alpena but what I had read, having never set foot in the community despite having grown up in Michigan, albeit on the Sunset side. In the 2 decades since moving my family here, Alpena has become our home and will continue to be after I officially walk out of my office for the last time. The spirit of the community represented by council, its boards and commissions, city employees, businesses, institutions, and our citizens have truly made Alpena a warm and friendly port and a sanctuary of the Great Lakes for myself and my family. I wish to thank everyone who has supported me, provided guidance and advice, worked with me on countless projects and issues, large and small, and most importantly, politely listened to my overlong reports, monologues, and State of the City addresses. In my last State of the City address, and all of them, I highlighted the many projects and issues that the city is involved with each year and spotlight those staff members or departments that are directly involved. Unfortunately, this omits the vast majority of our employees that keep city operations functioning day in and day out with little recognition. These include the HR department, specifically Kathy Himes, who keeps all other departments on the straight and narrow, especially the CM office, which is mine. The clerical staffs, who without most departments would grind to a halt. Engineering department staff that oversees construction and maintenance of nearly all the city infrastructure. Building department staff who keep our buildings safe and have the thankless job of enforcing city property codes. County and city IT staffs that keep us functioning in the 21st century. The DPW crews who maintain our parks and keep our streets clean and in good repair, summer and especially in winters like this, with few, if any, accolades. Our public safety personnel, police and fire EMS that do their jobs 24/7, 365 days a year. And the people of SUEZ who ensure our water and sewer systems are safe and efficient. All are dedicated to serving the citizens and businesses of our city, and I wish to thank each and every one of them for all they have done and continue to do. Last but certainly not least, I'd like to thank the City Council, my bosses, that have supported me as I did and continue to do my job to the best of my ability, even as I went through a very steep learning curve. It is a pleasure working with each of you, and I look forward to continuing that relationship in my remaining 10 months. I promise to continue to give my all to our city up to the day I walk out the door for the last time as an employee. When I do, I know Alpena is in the best of hands. The staff in place, the outside institutions and organizations, and the many committed individuals will ensure a bright future, and I will be around to watch it unfold. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to pursue two fascinating, challenging, and most of the time, fun careers with the city. One is a planner, which I deliberately sought, and the other is manager that sought me, even though I initially resisted. I look forward to my remaining 10 months. There is much to do and much to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. It's always a fantastic report, and you even made your final letter announcement enjoyable with accolades to all of your departments. Certainly appreciate your efforts, and we'll spend the next 10 months wisely. Entertain a receipt file for the manager's report if no one has any questions.
I move we receive and file.
Second.
Nielsen,
Yes.
Noak,
Yes.
Walagora,
Aye?
Hess.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. Next up is unfinished business. First, the second reading of ordinance number 19-441. Prohibit all recreational marijuana facilities within the city of Alpena.
Consistent with council policy, this would not be read again in its entirety unless one of the members specifically requests me to do so, which I'm more than willing to do. We just need deliberation and then action one way or the other.
Sure, and I guess for the intent of anyone that's either here or watching our meeting on YouTube that was not here for the first reading of this basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but its basic intent is to opt out of recreational marijuana sales for the foreseeable future until at least those are.
It's actually for all facilities,
For all
not
facilities.
just sales.
Well, we had already opted out years ago of the medical facilities, so this is.
No, I mean, it's not just sale. It's
Oh,
also
oh.
production,
Yes.
growing,
Production,
production,
growing.
everything,
Right.
all facets.
Yes, all right, thank you, sir.
Yes, just wanted to
Okay.
make sure they understood that.
Any
No questions?
discussion or
from the
questions?
council?
This one read well at our last meetings.
Yeah, I just want to say that we, especially now, when there are no permanent rules for recreational marijuana, it just makes sense to, there's, safety's sake to opt out until there are permanent rules, but I would think that when there are, they'd be worth looking at again to see what our thoughts are at that time.
Certainly, I would agree.
I move we approve ordinance number 19-441.
Second.
Noak,
Yes.
Walagora,
Aye?
Hess,
Yes?
Johnson,
Yes.
and Nielsen.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you, Bill. Next up is a revised ordinance, number 19-442, to prohibit the use of marijuana in public places with the city of Alpena. Discussion and first reading.
This is a ordinance of the City of Alpena, Michigan, adopting Chapter 54, Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Article 1 in general, to add Section 5411. Be it ordained by the Municipal Council of the City of Alpena, State of Michigan as follows. Section 54-11, marijuana and marijuana accessories. A, no person shall smoke, cultivate, distribute, process, sell, or display marijuana in any form or marijuana accessories in a building owned or operated by the City of Alpena. I do have a proposed change to paragraph B for your consideration as well. As it currently reads, Section B says, no person shall smoke marijuana in any form in a public place within the boundaries of the City of Alpena, including but not limited to any street, sidewalk, highway, alley, park, or parking lot located therein, or the city marina or city beaches. As council may recall, last time when we first read this, obviously it was more expansive than I think council wanted to go with it, so this was the proposed change. But subsequent to preparing this and having it be placed in the packet, I had an additional discussion with Chief Jett, and because of issues that are arising as we speak, there is a suggested change as follows. And that would be, B would state, if council concurs, as follows. No person shall smoke marijuana in any form, comma, to include the use of any inhalant device, comma, in a public place within the boundaries of the City of Alpena. So the added language would be to include the use of any inhalant device. And I'm sure there'll probably be some discussion about that, but Section C would remain the same, and that would say any person violating this section shall be responsible for a civil infraction and shall be assessed a civil fine not to exceed $500. And the provisions of this ordinance shall take effect 10 days after being adopted by the municipal council and duly published.
I guess I'm assuming that paragraph B will be our probably our point of discussion. And Joel, I don't know if you're ready to respond to questions on that. I guess I have a few, and I'll start. I think my intent of agreeing to that this would be a good ordinance is that what we want to do is from my perspective, is protect a couple of things. We want to protect the normalizing of this to children and young people that are in the area or vicinity of city property. And then the other would be to protect people from having the annoying, adults and children, from the annoyances of smells of smoke and things of that nature. I guess my question in adding inhalants would be, I'm not so sure that I'm educated enough to know that, are we talking about inhalants that disperse like I understand what a vaporizer is. You vape and then this stream of vaporized air, if you will, comes out. Now, if someone has an inhalant, and maybe I'm getting ahead of Amber, but she's had questions before about someone's medical device, like if and I'm rambling, but let's just say that somebody has something that's similar to a what's the an inhaler, like what do they take those for?
Asthma.
Asthma. Thank you.
We know all about that.
See, there goes my education level on that. Where I wouldn't know, I wouldn't be bothered by it, nor would I know whether that person has asthma or some other related medically treated marijuana device. If I don't know, and the people around them don't know, and they're legally using it under the state law, then how do we disseminate that? Or am I talking about something completely different?
I understand your concerns, sir. What kind of started this discussion was kind of the first thing was this was to include vaping, from my understanding, to curtail the also use of vape pipes. And we all know that vaping is kind of a urban terminology. It's become very commonplace now.
Mm-hmm.
And my concern that I talked to Bill was if we just say smoking, that I think there could be a debate, and I don't want this to be the test case, to say, well, I wasn't smoking, I was vaping.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which then led to a more recent development that we're encountering now, just recently. We're starting to receive the paraphernalia for the covert use of marijuana. Just within the past week, we had an individual, without going into a lot of details, that it appeared to be a key fob, just like a key fob. And you hit a button, and they put it up their mouth, and they're inhaling the marijuana. So my point is that we're always going to be behind the curve on these type of issues. And so not to restrict anybody's so-called medical use of this, but I do believe and I don't want to speak for council, but it was my opinion that it was also to curtail the not only the obvious use of it, but I believe that if you see people that are going to be holding up something in the mouth, whether it look like a key fob or a small pipe or whatever the case may be, I was under the impression that we were also concerned about that activity. Council member Hess at the last one had discussed about not depriving people of their the items that could be consumed. Would it be a pill or a similar type of consumable object that you could put in your mouth? I think the council had their opinions about that. But my discussions with Bill, I thought that the term of use of inhalant device or looking at other ordinances have been brought by other municipalities to curtail that. You will see words like or other smoking type of apparatus. You'll see that type of terminology. So I thought an inhalant device, and again, that was only the one I came up with, but it was to address the vaping and other forms of that maybe they could use to ingest the marijuana in that type of form. Because we are seeing it. We're seeing it already.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers your question, sir.
It does for the most part. Any other comments as far as the ordinance itself, as whether it's enforceable, whether you're going to have an issue with it that you?
I believe as drafted, it seems to be right up the line with other ordinances I've reviewed. The recreational is pretty straightforward, that you can't use it in all public, and so that's pretty straightforward. Where we see the loophole, for lack of better words, is the medicinal part of it. So, but again, with the new developments that we've already encountered, I thought that this was a prudent thing to at least discuss tonight, to make it known that this is what we're seeing already, that, and we're always going to be behind, the 8 ball, guys. It's just the nature of the beast.
Any other discussion or questions for Joel?
I have a question. On the inhalant devices that you're encountering, is there an exhaust from them? Like, so people take them in, are they emitting smoke or something at some point?
I only know the one so far, and I don't believe so. It was more of a, like I said, this is more of a covert thing. It was discovered on a student in the school. So that's why they're using these covert type of things to do this.
But they do exhale after they have
Yes, ma'am.
inhaled.
Yes, ma'am.
There is, you are exposed to that, whether you wish to be or not.
To what degree, I don't know, ma'am, but I mean, again, it's.
And your children and your whoever
Well, yeah,
is
ma'am,
in that
it's-
vicinity.
I would guess so. To what degree, I don't know, ma'am. But again, I think it's what are we looking to accomplish here? And are we looking to deprive people? Or, I mean, in law enforcement, we're sworn to uphold the rights of the people. That's what we do and enforce the laws. And so we're not looking to infringe on anybody's rights. However, we're also tasked with keeping our community safe, everybody. And so I just feel it's incumbent upon me to, as these things are developing in our community, to share them with you, so we can all make an educated
Good.
and informed decision.
I agree. And again, and this is just my perspective alone. And council can speak if they would like, but my biggest concern is the people that are around individuals that have decided that they would like to partake in what's legal in the state of Michigan. If somebody's down at the band shell, I can see an issue with someone smoking marijuana or even cigarettes in the midst of the crowd and people having to move or being annoyed by it. I could see that, and that's an issue, and I don't have a problem. Band shell, city public property, beaches, splash park, things of that nature. But if someone's not, and ordinarily nobody else around them would even know what they're doing, really don't have that much of an issue with it. That's a personal choice for them to do so. Nor would I even know, I guess. I wouldn't know if somebody had asthma or any other issue, as long as it's not bothering anybody around them. The high school and the school and things of that nature are completely out of our realm. That's an understandable issue, and that's where a lot of things develop for covert use and things of that nature. But we're not talking about the high school right now. I mean, I get how you brought that in, but our dialogue here would be the beaches, the Marina, city sidewalks, parking lots, this building, band shell, things of that nature.
People 21 or over, because that's what's legal.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I understand that the people who wish to smoke take whatever, any drug, and that would include alcohol. That is their personal decision. And as you said, you don't know who has asthma, but I guarantee you the people who have asthma know they have it. And they know when they're being impacted by something, some pollutant in the air around them. Now, where do my rights stop and where do yours start?
Well, that's my point.
Every
That's my
citizen
point.
in this country has a right to breathe without what they're breathing making them sick.
And that's my point. And my point is I don't want an ordinance that overreaches what's not affecting the people around them in any way whatsoever. So.
Well, good luck with that.
Well, that's what we're striving for here.
Right.
And so, I guess I just compared asthma because that's the only acceptable inhalant device I could think of right now that we wouldn't dispute someone needs.
True.
Nor am
Very
I going
true.
to sit here and dispute that somebody that's given a prescription to use medical marijuana for their treatment of what ails them is going to use an inhaler that has no exhaust. I'm not here to dispute whether that doctor is right or not. I'm just not. It's legal, and if it's not bothering anybody in the vicinity whatsoever, and you can't tell the difference between it and an asthma inhaler, I don't necessarily want the ordinance to say that they can't use it. It's a little bit overreaching to me.
Are vaping official enough to include smoking or vaping?
For me, I guess I expected vaping, because we know what it is. We know the law enforcement knows what it is, people around them knows what it is. Imagine, if you will, one of the chiefs, or the chief himself, or someone in the police department walking through monitoring a concert at the band shell, and someone pulls out an inhaler that looks like every inhaler we've ever seen, and he uses it. In my perspective, and Chief can answer in if he will, we're writing an ordinance that now he's got to go and he's got to find out what's in that inhaler. Didn't bother anybody around him. There was no exhaust, there was no smoke, there was no vape. They just pulled out their inhaler and used it. A law enforcement officer sees that, and because of the ordinance, as Part B that Bill explained, he would be required, I would assume, under his oath that we have an ordinance and it says inhalants, he's got to go and he's got to find out what's in that inhaler. It might be for asthma, might be for medical marijuana, but now he's got to go and find out. It didn't even bother anybody around him. It didn't affect anyone else. He's got to go and find out what that is because he saw it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, yes and no, sorry. It would give us cause if we chose to, but typically in those type of situations, we look at the totality of the circumstances. We look at to see are they exhibiting any other bizarre behavior? Are they creating a disturbance and so forth? And so it may draw our attention, and we may monitor it, but are we, I think, compelled to go and start questioning right away? No. We do have some discretion, which we exercise on a daily basis. If I may, sir, this is an example of another ordinance here, and maybe it'll something that we can kind of look at. And they actually have an area for definitions regarding smoking and vaping. And it says smoking or vaping means possessing a cigarette, e-cigarette, cigar, pipe, or similar apparatus, and that's why I referred to it earlier, that contains tobacco. Now this is also, they had banned tobacco products also in their public area. That contains tobacco, marijuana, cannabis, or any other product that is lighted or burning, lighting a cigarette, e-cigarette, cigar, pipe, or similar apparatus that contains marijuana or cannabis, or any other burning product that is contained in a pipe, cigar, cigarette, e-cigarette, or a similar apparatus. It's very, very redundant, but it's the whole idea of or similar apparatus. And they don't say inhalers, they don't say, because you can't, my point is you can't really define everything, because as soon as you have a list of 10, 11 and 12 come along. And so that's why these are often worded in very open, generic terms, because we all know that things are always developing. So, a lot of it comes down to also your trust with your department, we know what you're looking to enforce is the spirit of the law and what we call the letter of the law. And the spirit of the law is really what we're looking at to enforce. We're looking to deny people smoking marijuana or consuming marijuana in this type of, the smoking, the vaping, or other type of ingestion in this fashion. So the other ones I saw all were worded in a very similar manner, very open-ended, very generic, and it's done so for that reason.
I would,
I was just gonna say is, I know some ordinances, they actually put a preamble in it to say this is the purpose of what we're trying to do. Would that help in terms of clarifying, the purpose of the ordinance, the intent of the ordinance, rather than just saying that? And what I guess I don't know, when you talk about an inhaler that way, that fob, PFOB appearing device, is that, would that fall under smoking? To me, smoking is something that in some way is lit or whatever. It's not, and I don't know how vaping even works, if that's even, it's lit or not. We could still include that if we wanted to, as a separate, but, otherwise it's more, to me, it would be if they used an artificial device of some type. I always throw out, and I know it dates me and whatnot, a bong or whatever, or something else to smoke marijuana, if that's what they do.
I have
Or
no idea what you're talking
you have, oh, good. I get mine off the TV. So, whatever the device is, to smoke it.
Mm-hmm.
And, or they smoke it directly by simply, putting it directly in your mouth like you would a cigarette. But I don't know if these others, where I think from what you said, Bill, they use like, what, THC oil?
THC oil.
Oil, is that smoking? Because if it isn't, that's, is that something that we would be even fit into this, of what we're talking about?
It seemed more, I don't have a problem with the list that you just listed.
Yeah.
It just seemed, forgive me, but it just seems a little, I don't mind the open-endedness to keep up with what you're doing. If you say, cigarettes, pipes, cigars, e-cigarettes, vaporizers, or any similar apparatus, I find that more acceptable for the intent of what we're doing here than to say, inhalants, I guess. So that's my intent, and I think it maybe fits better with what we're looking for.
Which is fine, and just to let you know, that was, the terminology that I had proposed to build is kind of, so that was on me. But the purpose was to try to make it a generic term of something that you're going to be putting up your mouth, where everybody's going to be kind of looking, and there we go, because there's many forms to partake in that fashion. So we were trying to address that manner.
My general understanding of these new key fob devices are they're actually vaporizers. They're just a way to disguise it so that if I'm walking down the street, and got it in my hands, the average person would think I'm carrying my set of keys for my car. But it allows me to put it up to my mouth and hit it like an e-cigarette, and there is a vapor to it, absolutely. And if you're vaporizing the marijuana, there's a smell to it, similar to a marijuana smell. But it just looks like a set of keys. It doesn't look like anything illegal.
And let's be honest, the purpose for those are those covert disguised devices is for that reason alone. So if we see somebody who is not supposed to be possessing marijuana, under 21, for example, and they have a key fob, well, everybody has a key fob. And so we have a very unique job in law enforcement, and someday maybe I can share some more things with you that they look very benign to the general public, but you'd be horrified what they really do. Anywhere from weapons to other forms of disguising contraband. So we have a lot of challenges, and this is only kind of adding to it, but it is what it is. So
So if I understood what you said, Mr. Mayor, in looking at Councilman and Councilwoman Hess, is that terminology that Chief had read the second time around, you were comfortable with that terminology as written?
I think it better suits what
Okay.
we're after. And it encompasses, I think, what Joel is concerned with, the chief is concerned with. Just a note on anybody that has,
I can keep this?
anybody that's under 21 is going to fall under, doesn't even really fall under this ordinance. They're breaking the law, unless they have a medical marijuana card, they're breaking the state's law, which is already written. So if they have paraphernalia of any kind that has marijuana products in it, then that's already, that's what not even really addressing, in my opinion.
No, but I was just, getting back to that terminology, the initial terminology, you did not seem like you were very comfortable with. I was comfortable with either, but, if this is something I can live with that terminology is written by the chief. Presented by the chief.
It lists, in my opinion, it lists e-cigarettes, which is a term that's hardly even used anymore.
Sure.
So if you want to leave e-cigarettes in there and add vaporizers, or just eliminate e-cigarettes and put vaporizers in there, that I would be more comfortable, because the terminology is changing. But you're going to say similar apparatuses anyhow, so you're going to keep up, but they're going to change what
Yes,
they call
because
it.
in 2
here in a couple
years,
of
they may not call them vaporizers anymore, it'll be something else.
Yep.
So,
I'm comfortable with that.
thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Any
I
other
appreciate
questions?
it.
Thank you very much.
I guess my suggestion then would be so that council has a clear opportunity to look at it and see what it says before we do the second reading, that we come back for another first reading.
A third
of
first
our-
reading.
Yeah.
The third first.
I think that's fine, and we're not in a big rush for this. Our parks and things aren't really being that used, and I'm not in a hurry on it.
I'm comfortable with that too.
Okay.
Let's make sure we got it right. Thank you, Bill.
Do we need action on that, to have that revised?
No, I'll just come back with a new ordinance for first reading at the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Next up is new business, bid for Evergreen Chapel repairs. Rich?
On February 26th, the city received and opened proposals for the Evergreen Cemetery Chapel repair. This project includes repairs and renovations to the chapel located within Evergreen Cemetery. Over the past few years, the chapel has experienced severe leaks into the office and hallway between the peaked roof and the flat roof. Prior repair efforts have decreased but not eliminated these leaks. Due to leaking fixtures, both restrooms are not functioning properly, necessitating water to be turned off when the chapel is not in use, and the existing lighting in these areas also started to malfunction on a regular basis. We worked with cemetery folks and Mike Kalashevsky and developed the bid documents, and those bid documents were sent to 10 firms and posted on the city's website. We did have a mandatory pre-bid walkthrough for all contractors, and 7 contractors and subcontractors did attend the mandatory walkthrough, with 2 proposals received. And Meridian was the only contractor who submitted a complete bid. The base bid for them was $41,539. Then alternates 1 through 5 are as listed there, and they're delineated within the proposal submitted by Meridian Contracting. The second proposal was also received from DGI Roofing and Building Incorporated in the amount of $14,850 to simply repair and install the flat roof on the chapel and the shingle main roof, with no prices provided to complete the additional works or the ultimate items of work. A copy of Meridian Contracting Services proposal is attached outlining the proposed work. The city has also requested prices for 5 alternate work items related to heating and electrical efficiency and upgrades and building aesthetics as part of this proposal. Funding has been established in the general fund for cemetery building repairs with an amount remaining of $33,275. Additional funding for the replacement of the fence in the amount of $40,000 was also established. It is anticipated the fence funds will not be utilized this budget year. A fence replacement budget of $50,000 was approved in the CIP for fiscal year 19 and 20. After review of the base proposal and alternates and available funding within the cemetery department budget, I would recommend utilizing $23,312 of the existing fence replacement budget to complete the proposed work prior to June 30th. And thus, it is my recommendation to city engineer that the project be awarded to Meridian Contracting Services for the proposal base bid plus alternates totaling $56,587.
Anyone have any questions? I got a couple. Again, Rich, I'm always asking, it's like, was it the nature of the, all the work to be done? Have we contacted any of the other contractors that did the walkthrough that, that didn't want to take on the entire project, or was it the timing? What would be the reason? I'm just trying to figure out.
And I can't answer, we didn't contact anybody.
I did.
No, did you?
Yeah, the reason, some of them did it, because there were some new people there, and they assumed that the new people that didn't even bid it would bid so low that it wasn't worth their time putting numbers together.
Okay.
And everybody's busy with it.
It's okay, yeah. I've heard that from other contractors myself. Thanks, Tom. Okay. And the only other question I had, I wanted to see if I was reading that right now. And I may have missed this, and please forgive me because it's been a good week, or a hell of a week, I should say. The price that they put for the shingle roof and for the flat roof, their combined price was less than what the original number came in from Meridian Contracting?
Yeah, Meridian Contracting had put $13,837 in for replacement of the shingled roof portion, and the flat roof was $14,154. The proposal from DGI, and because they did not bid a complete package, we didn't spend a lot of time going through their proposal.
Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering, it's like, and again, I understand we want one contractor on this and stuff, but that just stands out to me as, quite a difference. I don't know the specifics of the bid and what the contracting would be, but if we can get the flat roof and the shingle roof for $14,000 versus the $28,000, I'm just wondering if it makes sense. I mean, that's.
And I don't, I'm not sure how, Todd's put all his, Meridian Contracting used to put his bonding costs, if he has other costs incorporated into that instead of into the alternate prices. I don't know how they set up their bid and how they put their numbers together on that, so I can't really offer if it's an apples to apples comparison.
I just, council, I just think it's worth at least, getting some more information on that, just to see where we're gonna land on that. I mean, that one thing really seems to stand out to me. I understand that sometimes when we hire a general contractor for a complete project like this, that, you want them to be able to handle all the work and subcontract out as they see fit, but that one figure alone just stood out. So, and that makes me question the rest of the bid as well.
I understand what you're saying, and forgive me, I was kind of reading through a couple things, but listening to you the best I could at the same time. So I get the gist of what you're asking. My question to Rich would be, 11, let me find it again, 10 firms, 7 attended the walkthrough, but only 2 proposals. Did Mike just ask you why there were only 2?
Yep.
I'm sorry, and that was because of the scope of the
Yeah,
whole.
and Don had actually answered that.
So I got.
I said a number of them are just busy as well.
Do we know, Rich, was the DGI roofing estimate, what type of roof they were looking at using? Because there's a big difference between
Material.
using a Duralast or having tar on it.
I
It's
can't-
cost, but also on time.
I can't answer that right off the
Okay.
top of my head.
So that could,
They use a rubber roof, but not Duralast.
Okay.
It's different.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask Don just a quick question? Don, in your experience, the cost of the Duralast and the roofing that, you know, would be used by, do you have any experience and the biggest difference is one last the other by quite a bit? Or is there?
No, they're, well, I don't know what, Don, DGI, I don't know what specific roof you bid. They come with all different kinds of warranties. But probably what Todd's doing, because Mike Schultz was there, who is the Duralast guy in our area, and he actually put that Duralast roof on there 20 years ago. That's what the warranty is on it for him. And all the issues came out. If you look at the chapel where they're just plastic, but they look like windows, you know, the stained glass windows there. That Duralast died, there was a little cement pad there and it dies right into it. It's just not high enough. You can't, you know, it's facing to the north or the southwest, so you get a lot of snow laying up there. Don was there talking with Mike, the Duralast guy, and Todd was talking about building that up a little bit because you really can't see the bottom edge of those windows, you know, to try to get a little bit bigger of a curb. And that very well may be incorporated in what they're planning on doing, and maybe it isn't in Don's. I mean, I don't know for a fact, but I know the conversations that I had with the contractors when they were there.
All right, thanks.
So you're proposing,
Well, you know, that was my
Or-
question.
or
It's
are
just
you-
like, you know, it's always hard when we get a single bid to know if you're getting a really good, you know, bid on this. I mean, it's scary for me when I saw those two numbers stood out to me quite a bit. I also said that, you know, what also stands out is that, you know, here we have a proposal, and again, it's either a compliment or, you know, something to Rich that usually he hits it pretty close when he estimates, so I just was, you know, wondering, you know, there's a couple of things that just stood out to me, as, you know, why the bid was much higher. It's a single bid. We've had experience in the past when we receive single bids or multiple bids, how different they can be. So it just kind of makes me question that when I saw that as well. Then I'm like, you know, I have nothing against Meridian Contracting, but I think it's worth at least, you know, us taking a little further look into that and seeing, okay, what is exactly, at least have them explain exactly what they're proposing on the roofing part of that. You know, why is one only 14,000, the other one is 14 and 15? I mean, at least have an explanation on that, you know, a little bit more details for us to make an informed decision, or to get some comparison in other communities, you know, what this would be for these repairs. I mean, that's just my own opinion.
I don't know how much value there would be to asking other communities, because there's so many variables that could probably happen.
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure.
I don't either, but, you know, it's one of those things where sometimes we have some comparisons on this, and what is the market value of these repairs?
Well, at the very
I don't
least,
know
we have a pretty significant disparity between just the two that bid on the roof. And you wouldn't see a necessity in splitting that from like individual proposals with all of the other work. Well, because right now you're not really sure how Meridian Contracting even bid that, nor would you for any bidder, how they put the numbers together.
One thing, Mr. Mayor, Meridian, Todd, when he worked for Tim Construction, they put that shingle roof on about, well, it would have been about 20 years ago. And the other thing, so he knows that sheeting that's on that roof is specialized sheeting, because when you're in the chapel and you look up, you look at tongue and groove 2x6s. So it's not like a roof at your house or my house, you just take a nail gun and nail the shingles, because they have to penetrate the sheathing. In this case, you'd be looking at the bottoms of all the nails. So the venting is actually performed underneath of the OSB, and it's got air channels going up there through it. Part of the specs that Shannon wrote up, because there's some shingles missing on the riverside, so we don't know if that OSB under there has been delaminated, but it'll have to be replaced. And it's not, you can't replace it like run to Home Depot and buy a sheet of OSB, you know, it'd be much different. And Todd would be very familiar with the process of that, because like, as I said, they put that roof on to begin with when we did it back in 2000.
So it was a special order roof that we had to go
Yeah,
through to try to put insulation up there.
So suggesting that his bid is higher because he knows the comprehension of
That-
Just
that's
hearing that
everything
alone
like
at least, gives me an explanation of exactly the work, scope of work, maybe.
Right, whereas if Don looked at it like, well, I'm just stripping off some shingles, yeah, I'm gonna throw 7 sheets of OSB extra in my bid, that could account for that lower number.
Okay, all right.
Seems reasonable. Answer to-
That's information I did not have. Anybody else have any other questions?
Anyone else?
I lost my place.
Motion either way.
Pardon me?
I'd entertain a motion on that topic.
You gotta go ahead.
Yep, I move we award the bid to Meridian Contracting Services for the proposal-based bid price plus the alternates totaling $56,587, taking how much out of, $23,312 from the existing fence replacement budget.
Second.
Walagora?
Aye.
Hess?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
And Noak?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next up is the SUEZ, SUEZ contract adjustment.
This is something that does happen from time to time. The last time was in 1988, 2008, when we had a contract modification for increases in costs. And this was set up in the original agreement between WW at that time, Williams and Works at that time, and the city. They estimated at that time what the operation, maintenance, and the various pots of money for each segment of the project. So there's a pot of money set aside for the wastewater plant, one for the water plant. And Mike and I have talked about this, Mike Lewinsky and I have talked about this, that for the last couple of years, they've been exceeding that allocation of money that is set aside for the water plant. And it's based on new regulations, new requirements that are coming down the pipe. And if you notice on the second page of Mike's memorandum, there's a whole list of items that that was put together by Mike Collins at the water plant of what costs he's incurring above and beyond what was originally anticipated on an annual basis, as far as testing requirements, et cetera, and costs. He sent that to both Mike and myself. Mike in turn went through it, and if the tick marks off in the right column, those are the ones that Mike, in his review, felt were warranted and accounted for additional funds that that need to be addressed or requested. So that's where Mike came up with the $17,100 in additional costs. Now, one thing that should be pointed out, and Mike Lewinsky's here, and he's gonna come up and talk in a minute, but these are only costs, if SUEZ incurs them, they're passed on to the city. If SUEZ does not incur them, if they don't exceed that budget, if they don't go up to 70,000, if they only spend 60, that's all they're gonna bill us for. So it's not just an automatic $17,100 payment to SUEZ. They have to have the documentation that shows they expect that to get that. So, Mike, if you want.
It might be helpful just to explain how the contract is structured. The last thing that we want to do is have the city have the impression that we are not doing maintenance so that we make a profit. So basically, we have a budget, we bill our expenses on a monthly basis, and that's all that the city's paying for. And the operation and maintenance Expenses are things related to maintenance of equipment, supplies that are necessary to operate the utility, analytical costs, and those change quite a bit from year to year. And the reason that we're asking for the request is primarily because of regulation changes that have happened over the last 9 years, since 2008. We really haven't recovered those expenses fully, but you can't not do those things over the course of the year. If we exceed the budget that's established, we have to ask permission to do that. And over the last 4 years, this year I anticipate we're going to be, if we keep spending at the rate that we're spending, obviously we're going to try to meet the budget, but we will have expended $72,000 in maintenance at the water filtration plant alone. That's based on a prorated monthly rate that we spent for the first 8 months. Last year, we were $8,000 over. The year before, we were $13,000 over. The year before, we were $11,000 over. The year before that, we were $1,000, $1,100 under. So there's a pattern where, because of the regulations and the increased costs of the analytical equipment that we've purchased that make things more precise in the analysis, as a consequence, we have to replace probes every year to make sure that they stay accurate. So those are all the things that are listed on Mike Collins's summary of the additional expenses that we've had since 2008 when the budget was adjusted. If we don't spend $72,000, we're not going to bill you for it. If we spend the $52,000 that's budgeted, that's what you get billed for.
And that's, based on the costs that you incur, based on hourly rates that you charge the city for some readings?
No, that has
or-
nothing to do with it.
Okay.
The contract completely separates the operation and maintenance expenses because we don't want the perception to be that we can make money scrimping on maintenance. That's the way the contract was set up back in 1988, and it's been that way ever since.
So these are, and just make sure I want, from my own understanding, these actual bills that you're receiving
Yes.
are, from
Yes.
outside sources?
This would be, we do send a lot of the analysis out because we're not capable of performing them. So it would be contract labs, it would be lab supplies that we need to perform our work. Like I said, the probes for the various equipment, any maintenance that we do, preventive and corrective maintenance. All of those things combined.
Okay, yeah, because one that stood out was like the MDAQ is $10,000 for a required monthly sample. Is that like a test that you run?
That was a increase in the surface water treatment rule that required us to do a test monthly for a 24-month period.
Okay.
So that basically is about $400 a month for 24 months.
That would have to be sent out, like we were talking about
Yes.
earlier, it has to be sent out because they cannot physically do it at our facility.
I can explain the testing for you if you like.
Yeah. I just wanted to understand exactly,
There are some
where
things
these
that are
getting
relatively
incurred.
expensive, and that one looks higher than it, really is, because it's a 24-month on a monthly basis that we had to do that for.
Okay, so if I'm understanding what you were saying, Rich, too, this is more like, it's raising the budget, more or less, saying, okay, rather than us being at 56, it's 70,000, and from what I understand, the expenses that Mike has been presenting have been over that?
Yeah, and every year he has to come to us and he'll say, Rich, I'm gonna overspend the budget here. I can make up part of it over here and part of it over here. So we stay within.
There's an actual accounting for each operation within the utility that I provide Rich, and it's updated on a monthly basis on how much we've spent. And basically, I can tell if we're going to exceed that, probably at this point. I know we're going to exceed it. So I generally inform Rich, but he knows because he gets that sheet of the bill every single month, where we're at for distribution, collection, wastewater treatment plant, and water filtration plant.
So can I ask a question, just so I'm clear? So we allocate 52.9 for that line that you're asking to go up, but if it goes past that, that's passed on to the city anyway, correct?
Correct.
But
I have to ask permission, but you can't stop the operation of the water filtration plant. You have to
Raising
spend
it
the money.
to the 70 just helps with budgeting and you not having to keep coming back and asking.
Well, really, it's, Mike Collins doesn't like being over his budget. It's not a good reflection on his,
Unless not.
on him. So,
Yeah.
So I have to ask him, point all the stuff out that has increased, because we need to be able to justify it.
Right.
And that's what his memo, his very exhaustive memo points out.
And I'm only asking that question based on Mr. Hunter's comment that perhaps this should be revisited every year instead of just giving you $17,000 in forever. This is required.
Yes.
For maintenance that we need to do.
Correct.
And you have been going over, so.
And we don't make any profit on it at all. There's no markup on any of those expenses. It's a direct pass-through.
Okay. I just want everybody, the public, I guess. to be
Yes.
clear.
Yep.
Just to make sure that what you vote on is accurate. You said all those items that had the little tick marks after them?
Mhm.
When I added that up, it came to 18,100, not 17. So I'm just saying, if you need 18, that's probably what you go.
Say 20.
Will you quit
Just to be
reading
sure.
things?
I rely on the chemist.
I don't know what yours show, but mine actually shows what.
I
looks
couldn't
like-
read that, yeah.
It shows 17,100 to the right, just before
Oh.
$1,000 for
Ah,
MDQ
so that's what it is.
credit.
I couldn't read that on mine, but
So perhaps you took that last 1,000.
did you take the
The
last?
ones that have the red mark.
Well, there is one below that 17.1 that says $1,000 and it's marked.
Oh.
And
That's for
it
the
is-
future costs, though.
For MD, yeah, estimate of future costs, MDEQ lead and copper.
That's why.
So are you eliminating, that one you're not putting in? Okay, then that explains it.
That makes sense.
I just, I figure if we're gonna do this, let's at least be accurate with the numbers.
Yeah, certainly thank Mr. Collins for his detailed report.
He is very precise.
Really precise and detailed. And my only question was actually going to be related to our guest and what his question was, so with that answered, I don't have any.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Rich.
You got it. Or do you want me to get it?
I can do it. I move that we approve to the O&M budget $17,100 to the current, let me get this right, 52.9, to bring it to $70,000 per year.
Second.
Hess,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nielsen,
Yes.
Noak,
Yes.
Walagora. Motion carried.
I move we adjourn.